Hello, everybody. It's Kim Butler. We'll be starting shortly. For those of you that jumped on, you've been hearing the Todd and Kim and Patrick show.
Oh, have people been on listening to us? Oops. I didn't know that.
All's well. I figured you saw that, so I didn't alarm you. I didn't think anything was of an issue.
All right. Just make sure that this is actually.
And Elizabeth doesn't need to be in the Facebook group for you to do that, right?
Oh, and I think it's going. So we're
It looks like it is on my end. Yeah.
sweet. All right.
Wonderful. Good. Couple minutes before the hour, you might want to make sure you've got a page for notes because there will be some good things today.
And Todd's beautiful Hawaiian shirt is just the tip of the iceberg.
And Katie diligently doing what Katie does best, which is build relationships. So while we're waiting, Patrick, do we get to hear about Boom Chicka Wow today?
Probably not. Probably not.
You had to attend Summit for that one.
We'll keep it PG. You had to be at Summit. Although it was recorded.
Yes, it was. So Paul's asking the name of the Facebook group. It's PEM Honorary. So Prosperity Economics Movement Honorary Facebook group. And Elizabeth Hagenlocker is there and will make sure that you're signed up for all the right pieces and parts and then accept you. Thanks for asking, Paul. Just another moment before the hour. Place to take notes, a big breath. Patrick, I was thinking about, how Gary Pinkerton said he does the box breathing. So I can't remember the fourth one. So it's in, hold, out, hold again.
Yeah. Had to be there.
Yeah. All right, it's the top of the hour. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you. Happy July. Happy birthday, America. I saw a cool thing the other day. There is a gentleman in Bangladesh that has sent Happy Birthday, America cards to his people in America for about 20 years. He started doing this when he was quite young. He did not know English. And he got on Facebook and started making connections. So when was Facebook? 15 years ago, 20 years ago, something like that. One at a time. And people started sending him books and magazines so that he could learn English. And he now has this huge list of people that he connects with and learns more about. He's learned history, like the entire American history from his contacts on Facebook. He feels like he's virtually moved to California, Texas, Virginia, and there were a couple other states. So fun story. All right. So, Todd, why don't you begin? Just give us a couple sentences. We were in Salt Lake City a couple weeks ago at the Summit for Advisors, our June flagship event. You'll all remember that we have one in February, one in June, and one in October to get on a business rhythm of continual learning and growth and conversation with like-minded people. And our June event is live and in person. Todd, a couple sentences from our time there.
Just a much deeper dive into what's really important. I learn from people a lot smarter than me, and that's always a lot of fun, and a lot of growth takes place. And so that's really what happened this time as well.
Super cool. And Patrick, why don't you give us a little larger lay of the land of some of the things that we covered there?
Sure. I would say first, if I were to summarize, at least what our intention was going in, it was to teach that exponential results come from exponential thinking. And in summary, what we tried to do within our very complex business that is comprised of a myriad of things ranging from marketing to customer service to dealing with financial companies. I mean, we can spend an hour just listing all the things that our business entails. It's essentially to take that complexity and to start thinking in a different way where we're not thinking one-dimensionally, we're thinking multi-dimensionally. And some of the examples we used were how the tech world thinks, how innovation occurs in our day and age. One of the examples I gave was of a tech investor. He's one of the oldest ones. A lot of the companies that he created and sold would be known to you. He's an older gentleman and now focused on alternative energy. His name's Bill Gross. But yesterday they announced that his company Heliogen, which is basically taking sunlight, reflecting onto mirrors to create industrial level heat, which right now is all mostly done by coal. But they just announced an IPO, right? $2 billion valuation, right? And to get to that type of idea, think of all the complexity, all the math, all the innovation that's required. So that's where I initially learned this kind of higher level of thinking. And what we tried to do is bring to Summit essentially 5 frameworks, 5 ways of thinking that we could place every aspect of our business into. And we covered all of them. The first, was something we've discussed in the past, which is the exercise of 3 ways to grow your business, and not just the actual numbers and percentage growth, but also the intention behind it and being able to connect that intention to the growth, and then the brainstorming of ideas. The second was a very organized core message. It spoke to your target audience. It positioned them. It positioned you. It also organized calls to action and ultimately what the result would be of working with you. And organizing that so that as you employ, whether it's contractors or in-house employees for marketing, customer service, back office support, there could be an aligned message that every team member could understand. So we talked through that framework, and then we talked through the client value journey, right, which is a multi-step approach to developing a relationship with a client for life, and that all of your activities fit within these different stages of relationship, and that if you skip steps, you essentially put the relationship in jeopardy. And the example Kim referred to a moment ago was there's a book by Desmond Morris, and it highlights the 12 levels of intimacy. And it's how a stranger and a stranger can become a spouse for life, and the 12 stages of that relationship. And the fact that if you skip stages, you will not develop that intimate relationship. So there is I would say, a behavioral model in which relationships develop both on a personal, intimate level, but also on a business level. And if you are trying to go too quick or too slow, you're going to lose people. So it's a framework in which you put your marketing content, you put your messaging, and you organize it in that way. Then we talked about Vince Dodona's parallel paths, a sales process, right? Where you're able to connect what the promise was in your marketing and your content with the actual implementation of a strategy, but it's doing it in a way where you spend your expertise, your education, your knowledge in developing the solutions, as opposed to educating and teaching people, which most people tend to do. And so his parallel paths is a brilliant process in which you are able to get to relationship, get to client data so that you can develop a strategy for them and ultimately provide the solution that you discover in a very short conversation. Then it's, you know, parallel asset flow and the perpetual wealth way, which is our wealth strategy, financial strategy calculator, as well as presentation deck, which is a software. And so we went through all 5 of those frameworks, right, which ultimately is a way to exponentially grow your thinking, because it allows you, instead of thinking, you know, without organization, it allows you to put what you're thinking into a specific organization. And what we used to demonstrate that is the fact that, you know, people are overwhelmed with information. Our brains, our bodies are not meant to process the things that go on a daily basis. We're in overload, and teaching people new things is going to go in one ear, out the other. There has to be something significant that happens from an emotional perspective or repetition in order for people to connect, or else they won't change. And so what they do in order to survive this like information deluge is they create unintentional cognitive biases, which are frameworks to process what's going on. And these biases usually are to protect us, right? So the most common cognitive bias is cognitive dissonance, which is when we hear something that is contrary to a belief system that we have, we immediately feel it and feel threatened by it. And we ultimately do one of 2 things. We accept it, or we justify the belief system we had previously. Or there's confirmation bias, where we seek out the people, the books, the Facebook groups, the social media audiences that already believe what we believe, to confirm what we already know. And we don't do this intentionally, we do this unintentionally. Okay? So those cognitive biases are formed. There's also the halo effect, where we put credence, we put credibility on what someone says, not based on their background and what's being said, but based on other factors. Great example is a celebrity. Because they have been in movies, they sit on this like entertainment pedestal, right? We accept what they say politically in the same way we respect them as an actor or a musician. So again, these are just, there's over 140 confirmed cognitive biases. We all have them because we naturally form them, because it's a defense mechanism for all the information that we're constantly bombarded with. So the solution to that is being able to develop thinking models and frameworks. And so what we covered at Summit is all 5 of the frameworks that we've used and found successful. And they could exponentially help you grow your business as well. And you know, we can go story by story with all the heartache and hardships of, let's try this marketing campaign, let's bring on this advisor, let's bring on this marketing professional, let's bring on this customer service person, right? We have all the stories over the last, you know, collectively 50 years of business plus, right, of what not to do. And ultimately we've discovered that these are the ways in which you can fit what you're doing, what you know, into these organized buckets, okay, so that it up levels your thinking. It goes from, you know, kind of a first gear on a bike, pedaling really fast, right? Adding one mental model framework, and stacking those so that you can eventually get into 21st gear and go really fast. So anyway, that's what we covered at Summit in a nutshell. Is that decent?
It is. I'm typing in to the chat box the quote that we used at Summit about frameworks. And Tammy and I came up with a great analogy connecting parallel paths. So just to catch you all up, for those of you that have not been at previous summits, Vince Dodona has given us parallel paths in previous summits. It is a PowerPoint that looks like this, that if you've been to previous summits, you may have. If you have not, he's added to it some video training, and it's in the Evolve membership. So PEMevolve.com, I'll put that link in a little bit. And as we were working through this, so Patrick kept saying we talked through. We actually also worked through. So Patrick or Todd or I or Vince would set a framework out and we would go over it, maybe using our examples or a generic example that people would be able to catch. And then we would do the work. So listen to the framework about frameworks that Tammy and I came up with today. She said, think about a closet, the type that has two bars in it, right? For shirts and pants or however you divide your clothes. And those two bars are the parallel paths, which you want to go to your client with empty. Because when we come to our client with a PowerPoint or a gimmick or the latest idea or education, like Patrick said, it's just either washing over them or bouncing off of them because it doesn't connect to them. Whereas when you come to your client with a very short message, because you do need to have something of parallel paths, which is literally like 5 to 7 minutes, it's an empty closet and all it has are the rods, the parallel paths, right? Thank you, Elizabeth or Katie, whoever popped that in there. And that's the way that you can help your client get results. They get to hang the clothes on the closet. And this goes back to one of the other frameworks that we talked about, which is the way that you tell your story and some of the ideas that we put forth to, again, help people flesh that out. And I would say that the crowd at Summit this year went away with 80% of the work done. You think that's about accurate?
Definitely.
That enabled people to then go home and implement much quicker. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to continue to get better at ourselves. And we have Summit coming up again in October. It will be virtual this time. It's the 28th and the 29th. And so same website, the summit number 4advisors.com. And I encourage you to get on that rhythm of a trimester event on the conceptual side where you're learning about the storytelling and the frameworks and the various things that we know we can get better at as human beings. And then add a fourth event to your repertoire there of a truth training so that you get the numerical side as well, because we still have to have that proof. Todd, will you tell the story of the high school teacher and the know what you know?
Yeah, that's a big piece of where we are. There's one thing to know the answer, and there's another thing to know that you know the answer. And those are distinctly different. And I think that for many of us that have been in the business for a little while, we know the answer, we've seen it, but we don't have that confidence of beating it up from every possible angle to the point that we know what we know, so to speak. And so, we really have to get to that place. It's an amazing change in the confidence level. It's an amazing change in the amount of work/persuasion that you have to do for your client, because it just doesn't take it. Once you get, when the client senses that you know what you know, they're gonna look at what you say a lot differently. They're gonna be more open to it. I think it really, there's two schools of thought there, and I think it's kind of both of them. And one is that because you're confident, people believe in your confidence. But I think there's also another piece is when they can see that I think you answer the question in a different way. You answer it with the client's mind, the client's position on your mind. And so you're answering it from that perspective so that it's more relevant to the client versus trying to keep it, is this right? I mean, this is the conversation going on in your head because you're not really sure while you're talking to your client. And that takes away from who's actually going to benefit from it. So I think both of those are critical. And the only way you get that, like I say, is to hit it from all sides. Is this true in every scenario? One of the things that I know when I go in and talk to a client, at the forefront of my mind is life insurance is going to improve their situation. And we could say, oh, that's just one strategy. You've got a product that you're pushing, and that's not the case. It's just that I have seen it so many times that when I go in, I'm pretty sure that is going to be a big part of the answer. And so far, it's been that way every time I go in and talk to a client. So I'm confident in that as a result. And so we start to look at how does that fit into this person's world? How does it improve their world? And I will start there to see what impact that has before we open up other things, just because I know it's most likely going to be the answer.
So I'll add a couple of things, because when you understand a truth about something, okay, that confidence is there's a slippery slope attached to it, because when you're confident, usually that either threatens or empowers somebody. I'm not sure if it does anything else. And oftentimes confidence comes across as threatening. And looking at what we know, what we use software to prove, right? We have assumptions and hypothesis about life insurance. We have assumptions and hypothesis about tax strategy. We have assumptions and hypothesis about the stock market, about average rates of returns, about net returns, after inflation returns. We have all of these hypotheses, and Truth Concepts allows us to not make it solely a hypothesis, but something that's proven with data, right? Math essentially is able to communicate and prove what we assume, what we hypothesize. At the same time, when you gain that confidence and you show up with that confidence, oftentimes it's manifested right in, I'm smart, you're not, I'm right, you're wrong. And it's not even the words that are said, it's the feeling that comes from that, which immediately ruins relationship. Again, as I spoke about before, the 12 levels of intimacy, right? You skip steps. And if you ask a girl or a guy to marry you after the first date, chances are you're going to have to go on a lot of dates in order for that to happen, right? So the idea is that how you bring your level of confidence and understanding about what's right, okay, it has to be communicated in a way that builds relationship. And that's the importance of framework, right? Because without parallel paths, which is PEM's sales process, client process framework, without that, without following those steps, okay, you end up spending time, energy, not in what you learn and gain in understanding, but also in frustration when clients don't call you back. When you prove out this, and this, and say, here, look, here's the proof. You're wrong, I'm right. When you do that, you're not going to make much progress as an advisor. And that's why having information and knowledge and education and experience, right, where you actually go through exercises and understand that what you're doing is the right thing and the best thing, okay, it must fit within a framework in order to properly connect with a client who is never going to know what you know, okay, is never going to have the experiences that you experience, okay, and just because you teach them something, okay, one time, the chances that they remember it are pretty much next to zero. Yep. So the idea is that you want to have a framework in which you communicate with clients, also a framework in which you demonstrate that expertise. So the first framework, parallel paths. Okay. Second framework is perpetual wealth way and asset flow. Okay. These are two frameworks that you fit this knowledge, this information, this education into that is most likely to connect with what a client wants and the solutions to what's holding them back from achieving an even better financial life.
It's been super fun to watch the progress that a lot of our community members are making, not in the area of their financial knowledge. Yes, we see that too, but in the area of who they are and how they show up and how they are being. Because once you get, especially some of the basic financial knowledge and you're able to prove and you're able to know what you know, the way to get results quicker is to work on yourself and work on how you are being and how you are showing up in those meetings. And that's about as far from financial work as I think you could ever get. I can't think of two more opposite things. And yet, this is where I know that our movement is going to set itself apart. That the advisors inside the prosperity economics movement are demonstrators of a humble sense of confidence so that you get the good of the confidence side, not the bad of it. They're good storytellers of their own story so that they're completely individualized, because the landscape is tired. You know, the people in America and Canada are tired of any financial message, frankly. And, you know, we may think we have a different financial message. There's enough of us, and I'm going to expand now, not to just the PEM community, but of just life insurance agents. In fact, I'll even get more specific than that. Whole life insurance agents, whole life friendly life insurance agents. There's enough of us out there that even that message, which may have been unique a few years ago, is tiresome and is potentially very gimmicky, because when you first meet somebody, you don't know if they have a ton of debt or a ton of money or anywhere in between. You have no idea, because most times even their friends don't know. And so even if you've been referred to somebody, doesn't mean whether they are in a particular situation financially, nor does it mean that they're in a particular situation mentally and psychologically, you know, with their own sense of who they are as a human being. So it's been fun to see our movement grow to a place where we've got really solid help on both of these things. You need help numerically, proving numbers, knowing what you know. We have that. You need help growing as a human being, being more of service, being able to truly forget self and sit in front of your client and just be with them, just listen to them. And that's where we're seeing now the better and improved and quicker results occurring.
Yeah, I think there was one quote that was shared, you know, I came to learn about life insurance and ended up learning about life.
About life.
That was a good summary. But before we forget, so we recorded the entire 3 days, and I'm not sure when it's going to be spliced up and available. But I don't know if Elizabeth is the right person to email. Maybe we can put an email address in the chat and in Facebook. If you guys want to be notified when those recordings, as well as some of the supporting templates and documents are available, maybe Elizabeth can put her email address in there and you guys can send an email to her, or maybe just put your name in here and we can notify you when that stuff is available. But yeah, I would say, you know, one of the things that's a blessing for us, but also one of the things that is also a curse, right, is because of how different our strategies are, right? It's a blessing because we've had to essentially prove it to ourselves. We've had to develop calculators and ways in which we can show this versus that. So it helps us to understand it and be more confident about it. At the same time, it's kind of a curse because people are overwhelmed with information, and they've been able to develop essentially a bias, right? A belief system around what they should be doing with their money. And it's not intentional, right? It's unintentional. The commercials they hear, the presentations, what their friends are doing, what their neighbors are doing, right? What financial celebrities tell you to do, what books tell you to do, right? It is overwhelming the amount of information that supports one narrative. And for us to come in with a different narrative, it's almost like water off a duck's back without strategy, right? Without really understanding how to build relationship, how to connect with people, how to use a calculator here, use it there, what to say in response to a comment or a statement or a question. There are very clear ways in which we've developed into frameworks that you can use over and over and over again so that you're not constantly spending time and energy, right, on trying to answer the question the right way, whether it's an email or text or voice or live, or it's awesome. And I mean, it's taken us a while to come to these conclusions, right? And we're still iterating and improving them, but it's incredible the results that I'm getting, a lot of the members are getting, and I know we'll keep updating everyone on some of that success. And obviously, we're going to be speaking to speaking to these frameworks in future summits as the context, right, to put new information, but also confirm existing information.
Yeah, it was interesting. So one of the things, so Kim and I talked to Tammy a lot of times on Saturday mornings. It wasn't Saturday this time. It was because of the long weekend.
We did both.
Did we? Okay.
We had so much to cover that we talked to her Saturday morning for a bit, and then Sunday morning we picked it up again in an effort to finish what we've been talking about.
But what was really cool is one of the things that came out, and it's something that, so Summit is such a cool thing for me because I learn so much from everybody there, and especially the extra time I get to spend with Vince and Patrick and Kim, and we share stuff. And what was really cool was to see how all these pieces that we had, that we've created over the years, pieces and parts, and we followed the principles that we created initially, and everything adhered to the principles. And what's cool is we're finally seeing how all those pieces come together, and nothing contradicts anything else, which is really kind of cool. You would think that something in those disparate pieces would have contradicted somewhere, but I think because we stayed with principle along the way, they all actually match and enhance the whole thing. And it's just like we're right now on the brink of everything really coming together. So it's just a massive amount of fun.
Well, I think in our industry, in financial services, there's a common way of doing things, and it's very one-dimensional, right? And it predates a lot of the innovation that has made life both more complex but also more simple. And this pre-existing, it's the dominant narrative, it's the dominant framework that advisors use, that is coming from top down, from financial companies to their representatives, to general agency heads, to managers, it trickles all the way down, and it shows you how powerful frameworks are. But that's what we're trying to bring to the table is more modernized frameworks that we didn't create. These are things that are used by big corporations, big innovators, right? That are doing some incredible things. And like I said, we've only identified 5, right? There's a lot more, but we're starting with 5. We're even hesitant to start with 5 because that's quite a bit. But if you look at all of the different aspects of a successful modern financial practice, these are the models, these are the frameworks, right, that are working, and I believe will transform our ability to connect with people and bring our solutions and bring our message to those that are looking for it, because they are.
Yeah, and I think if we don't recognize those frameworks in our own lives, it's about impossible for us to see how that's impacting our clients. And so, once we can recognize those frameworks and set some of our own that are contradictory to what happens accidentally. So focused, intentional frameworks and creating those in our own lives allow us to be able to transfer that to our clients, I think. And otherwise, I don't know how we can do it, because, while everybody is very different, there are a lot of similarities. And one area is that cognitive dissonance area. It's so easy for us to dismiss stuff. And so if we're wired that way and we know that, then we also have to know that our clients are wired that way too. And so the only way we're going to make a difference is if we start setting a framework that says, okay, this is how I am going to approach new information. I'm going to give it X amount of time before I dismiss it automatically or something, so that it actually has some impact on me. And if we can understand how that goes on in our lives, now we've got a tool that we can share with our clients and actually have some impact there, versus because they're wanting to do the same thing, right? It's all about time. It's about this crazy amount of information that's bombarding us all the time. It's about our minds trying to be as efficient as possible with the time we're limited and try not burn any more calories than we need to. So we have to break that somewhere, right?
So I want to just handle a couple administrative things that will be helpful, and then we'll get into our main discussion today of our various comparisons, which we have to be careful about, with the idea of living on interest versus spending principal. So yes, if you would like to have an option for purchasing the videos, the PowerPoints, the worksheets, everything that was covered at Summit, if you'll email Elizabeth at pem.email, thank you, Elizabeth, for tackling that. That's probably the best way to get that done this time. You can also reach out to her in the Facebook group and just give her your email via that method if that's easier. I know Facebook sometimes doesn't allow that, so probably email's best. Email Elizabeth at pem.email. And then Chris Tormey, you've nicely asked a question about PEM Evolve that I want to take a moment with before we hit our main subject today. So Evolve is a membership course that we've set up. It has 12 levels, similar to progressing through school. So I guess 13, kindergarten through 12th grade. And yet it is designed to be something that will continue adding to as you progress. We're progressing also. And so it doesn't mean you have to stay in it forever. Yet I think people will find that there's continued value there. And if not, then we'll stop it or you can opt out. Always, always an option. So the call that is this Friday at 1:00 Central was designed to be for Evolve members. But I think what we'll do is open it up to everybody that's on this call. So those of you that are on this call, if you will reach out to Elizabeth at pem.email, we will get you the special invite for the 1 p.m. Central. So that's 2 Eastern and 11 Pacific, 12 Mountain, where we'll have an hour of Evolve membership discussions. And whoever's there, if you've been working your way through the Evolve coursework, which by the way, can be done at your own pace. So it may take you 12 months to get through it. It may only take you 12 weeks to get through it. That will be up to you. Nevertheless, you can't jump ahead. So you have to go through it because we created it in a learning methodology that we feel is going to be best for you to layer on the learning and not lose track of where you are. And as we've been talking about, it begins with parallel paths. So that's actually, I think, 2nd grade, but that's early on in the process. And then there's some truth concepts information in there, but it's not a truth training. It's definitely more on the higher level conceptual aspects of things. And then from there, we'll figure out what we keep adding to it to continue to get the growth that we're looking for, that I know you guys are looking for as well. Patrick, you were heavily involved in helping me create that course. Anything you want to add to that?
No, it's meant to, I would say, categorize the information we've done over the years, right? Whether they're webinars, whether they're specific breakouts at the various summits that we've done, and all of them have relevance. We try to put them into kind of a milk before meat sequence, right? So that you're learning more fundamental principles before you get into more complex strategy and higher level thinking. I had an interesting conversation today with a client, and his parents are older. They're in their 90s. Well, it's actually his mom passed. It's his dad and his dad's second wife, but she was given kind of open-ended permission to use his money, and the family all just found out that she was set all of her kids up on this cell phone plan, and these are adult children, right? All their kids are on cell phone plans. She was paying partial rent for a few of the kids, and so the reason why I bring that up is, I think there's an importance of having guiding principles, right, that dictate the behavior, the things that we do, right? And so a lot of the early stages of Evolve, right, is to speak to the principles, the criteria of our financial strategies, right? They keep us, I would say, in, they're boundaries in essence that prevent, right, irrational behavior, because clearly this woman did not have conditions. It was basically, oh, I have all of this money, I'm just going to give it to my kids, right? There were no boundaries set, right? There was no criteria involved. It was just, here you go. So my point is, with PEM, with the principles that we believe in, these aren't just words that we've come up with, but they're tested. We want you to test them and see their relevance and experience their relevance. But what they do is they help to rein in what we entertain as far as strategy, products, what we say, the language that we use, because we're human beings, we're fallible, right? And without those guidelines, right, without that criteria that we accept in the beginning, right, and these are the first couple of levels of Evolve, then everything else that comes is filtered through those guiding principles.
I think that is a perfect segue to answering a question that has just popped in on the Q&A. And so I'm going to share my screen with our principals. So Patrick, if you'll throw me back that ability, and maybe you can't, and I don't need to share them if that's not available.
No, I will.
Because it answers the question. So the question put forth by somebody in our community that's here on the call today is, there are these lead systems out there that are from IUL and annuity companies promising leads. And I don't see anybody in the whole life space doing that. So I'm paraphrasing the question. And I am tempted by said leads, but I'm conflicted because of the product. Patrick, you want to address that while I try to get this on the screen?
Yeah, no, it's a perfect example, very timely example, right? I think in the end, we've all been subject to justifying our behavior, right? Even though we know it's in gray area, we've done it and we justify it. And that's, again, part of our system, how we're wired, and ultimately form cognitive bias. And that's why we start with principle, because on one hand, as Kim said, leads are, sometimes that's the lifeblood of a company. Okay. At the same time, at what expense, and what are you willing to compromise? And that's where, again, principles are important, because if they're leads, right, and they've been promised unprincipled results, okay, now you're fulfilling unprincipled results with your strategies and products. And so that's where, like I said, I want to take a kind of an even road, right, with what's promised in IUL, what's promised sometimes in annuities. Okay, it's partial information. It's a hypothesis, and the hypothesis, right, is usually just accepted by the industry. And what we encourage members of PEM advisors, right, is to take the hypothesis and prove the hypothesis. Okay, use an objective set of mathematical principles to prove the hypothesis or disprove it. Okay, and that's what brings us to understand, okay, what's right and what's wrong, so that we don't compromise our integrity, we don't compromise our principles. Okay, and so with regards to IUL and annuities, these are easier products to sell. Okay, and that's why I believe there are more leads available. There's more intrigue. Who doesn't want to have all the upside with none of the downside? Okay, so there are claims that are made that are appealing to people. At the same time, we have discovered, and I don't want you to just take my word for it because I'm just another guy, right? But we have the tools, we have the training, so that you can know for yourself if those promises, right, are based in principle or they're based in gray area claim. So I'll leave it at that, but really looking at lead opportunities, amazing, take them if they align with your values and your principles. And those values and principles, they're not just words, they're how you behave. And when you learn kind of what principles have to do with behavior, that's where you're either in or you're out. You can't be in a gray area. And so looking at the principles that we've discovered, looking at the training that we've gone through, we feel strongly about certain financial products, and we feel strongly well, we feel strongly about all financial products. Either they align with our principles or they don't. And we don't just say that, we've proven that. We have gone to the math, we've gone to the assumptions, and we've shown this is what's claimed, this is what reality is. And then it gives you a decision. And the decision is, I either operate my business in an unprincipled way, or I operate my business in a principled way. And you may not know what your principled way is. And that is why, deep diving into whether it's truth training or some of the even free resources that we have, and even coming to these webinars, right? Or listening to the recorded webinars, like they will help you to understand our principles. Not that you take them at face value, but you discover what's true for yourself, and then you align your practice with those truths.
So I've shown the 12 principles that the prosperity economics movement espouses on the screen. And if you don't have these handy, you can get them at prosperityeconomics.org, which is the client side of the movement, or in your Prosperity Economics Advisors online system, which if you signed up recently for honorary, you should still have a username and a password for that. And if not, you can click the forgot password button and get signed back in there. And honorary is a free membership where all of the prosperity proofs are available. So this one, the 12 principles that we're looking at, and then the other one, which is what we've been basing our webinars off of, is also there. And where we are right now in the month of July is on this subject line right here of living only on interest, which is what typical financial planning promotes and guides people to do, versus what prosperity economics recommends, which is to spend and replace principal and get that flexible, sustainable way to live that is very much about perpetual wealth. And I forget if I've alerted everybody in this community, but we have a perpetual wealth book out now that's on Amazon. It's Kindle, hardback, and Audibles, and tells a lot more about this idea of spending and replacing principal. Patrick, we've got about 15 minutes. And Todd, if you want to maybe just briefly start us in on this subject matter and the difference between living only on interest, just from a high conceptual level, the difference between living on interest and spending and replacing principal.
Sure. I think a big piece, if you think about the living only on interest, a lot of that comes back to the whole idea that was brought about really in the 70s and 80s, the idea of buying term insurance and saving the difference. Actually, it's for a lot of people spending the difference, right? but we won't go there. And the point of that really was, if you think about it, to the advantage of the financial institutions, not to the individual that has it. It's very constricting for the individual that follows this path. And it starts with the initial strategy, even before we get to the point of the distribution cycle. Because during the accumulation cycle, the money is locked up with the financial institution. So it's great on their end. You put it in an area where you can't access it, and the financial institution gets to access it. So they're making money off of your money during the accumulation phase with the thought process for the individual. It's like, someday I'll get to use this money, and so it's okay in the meantime. And eventually, maybe if I live that long, I'll be able to access it, right? What happens is, because that strategy was put in place early in the accumulation phase, now the person advances in years and we get to the distribution phase and they're stuck in the same box. And now the box has changed from the accumulation side of the money being locked up to the distribution side of it being locked up. And think about it from the standpoint of the financial institution. By locking people up in this box, the individual who sweated, saved, did without, was disciplined, put the money in there, they get to the point of distribution and all they get is the piddly interest, while the financial institution still gets to hold on to the bulk of the asset. So they still have all the advantage with your money, or the person who followed the buy term invest the difference strategy, even throughout the distribution phase. And so it's really disappointing place to be, and it was all set up from the very beginning. And so the other thing is how much stress is there around that, because now then if you're on the interest side, whatever fluctuations have in the market are going to directly impact your ability to eat. So every time the market changes just a little bit, it could increase the amounts you have a little bit, but are people really saving on that side, or are they relieved to say, oh, look, I made a little bit more, so that then when the downsides, when the interest rates go the other way, now then, they don't have as much, or maybe even not enough. And so when we're pushed over to the prosperity economics idea of what to do and having access to that money and not being locked in that, if we've created a life insurance replacement tool out there on the other side, now then we have the freedom to do whatever's best based on whatever the economic environment is at the time. And in many cases, spending the principal along with the interest is going to be the best option, and it's actually going to reduce tax. So there's huge advantage, and also the freedom from being stuck with market fluctuations all the way through the process.
So here's let me add to it. Here's what's cool about the Perpetual Wealth Way process that we have, as well as asset flow, is you not only have a strategy that's based in product, you have a strategy that is based on criteria. Okay, all clients have criteria, but rarely, if ever, is it ever understood or identified. So criteria, I think the simple one is the degree of risk, right? And we use the principles of certainty and uncertainty, right? Where you look at, again, spending interest versus being able to have a more sustainable way to spend even more, have less tax, as well as pass on legacy in a very certain way. You have to value that criteria first, and clients may not, but they might. And chances are they will. And the criteria is risk. The criteria is the degree of certainty. And we can keep kind of qualifying client strategy or wealth strategy with criteria, but that's the point of principle, right? Is you're not only trying to get a client a certain outcome, but you're trying to get them that outcome that aligns with their criteria, their conditions. And rarely is that ever done. It's typically product versus product, strategy versus strategy. But you need a way to value certainty, guarantees, okay, tax efficiency, okay? Because that right there, those principles, that criteria is going to engage in them emotions, right, that they're familiar with and that they will now attach to strategy, both on a positive and negative side, right? Because when somebody takes on too much risk and are put in the position later in life, right, to be betting their paycheck on this happening, this happening, this happening, and this happening, they feel that, they know that, and they don't want to feel that. But if you're able to provide strategy that aligns with their criteria, number one, it's going to be a discussion that they never have, because most financial planners do not base their strategy on this type of principled criteria. But you allow a connection at an emotional level, right, that aligns with what they actually want in the end, but a strategy that may even give them less money than if they follow the typical financial planning strategy. But because it aligns with that criteria, they will likely be clients. So
yeah, it all really falls back to the parallel paths, doesn't it?
I was just going to say, the very first question, actually the second question in this document is, what are 3 things that you would like to have happen financially? What are 3 objectives that you have in your financial life? And Patrick, I'm going to guess that they've never even been asked that, because most people are going in wanting to educate, present, show something. And you can be of value by asking a question and then being quiet. We don't have to be constantly in show mode. Sorry?
Yeah, no, sorry. I thought you were through that. And I think part of the reason that people are in that show mode is because they're afraid of the questions. And that goes back to what we started with, kind of, and that's about the knowledge that we know what we know, right? If we're to that place, we're not afraid of any question. And are there going to be questions that we don't have answers to? Sure. And boy, talk about a place to be honest with your client and say, you know what, I'm not sure. I'll have to check that out. Let me do that and get back with you. That is so much better than saying, oh, well, that's a bunch of junk over there. And that's not an answer. And we've all had that happen to us. So why would we want to do that to our clients at the same time by knocking something else we don't even know about? Does that make sense?
So Shellery's asking about what document I'm referring to. It's called the Parallel Paths, and it was given to all the attendees at the summit most recently and also previously in February. It did not come at Truth Training, I believe, and it's available now with training inside the PEM Evolve membership. So it sounds like you're remembering it now.
Who gave it?
Vince Dodona. So it is trademark Prometheus Speaks. And I was kidding with Tammy this morning. I think it should actually be, I think Vince maybe should change his company to Prometheus Listens because that's what the Parallel Paths helps you do. And what's so fun, just as we're wrapping up here, is it's super short storyline about these two parallel paths. Again, think about an empty closet with the two poles that you bring to the client to let them hang their clothes on with whatever color and what organization they have. It ends with a statement that is what Todd was talking about a few moments ago, which is essentially, or I guess it is a question also, would you rather have Todd, help me with the numbers. 95% chance. No. Would you rather have 100%? I get them mixed up all the time. Would you rather have 100% chance of getting to 95% of your maximum potential, or a 50-50 chance of getting to 100% of it? And that's the difference between those two parallel paths. That's the difference between living on interest versus spending and replacing principal. So maybe you only get to 95% of your maximum potential, but because you can spend and replace principal, you actually get more life out of your life, and you get more life out of your money, and your whole life is impacted by that.
Yeah, this goes to criteria, right? Because chances are when you present strategy, okay, there's going to be how come I haven't heard about this before? My, Edward Jones advisor says this, my Charles Schwab advisor says this, right? So what this does is it allows you not to compare strategy to strategy, okay, or product to product. It allows you to use criteria. You said you wanted these outcomes underneath this criteria. Okay, this is what this strategy says, okay? And here's what I've presented says and does, okay, which aligns with criteria. Again, so it's one of those things in parallel paths. In an insanely short conversation, you can gather what outcomes they really want and what are the conditions and criteria that they want those outcomes, which that's 99% of it.
Yep. Todd, you had one last thought?
No, I was just going to say, I think one of the things, and it goes back to the idea of how simple parallel paths is and what was being talked about here, you get to the root of what's really important from the client and you do it in a simple manner. And that's such a key thing. It goes all back to the cognitive biases that we've been talking about. People don't want a long, complicated thing that they're going to have to think about. They want their goals, their thoughts, their future answered, a solution for that, how to be on a path to do that, and they want it in the simplest manner possible. And I think one of the things that happens in the financial industry is somewhere somebody decided that the more complicated and complex a solution was, the more likely people are gonna latch onto it, and it's just not the case.
Not at all.
A very bully, top-down, hierarchical approach, and people don't like their jobs not because of what they do, and I'm just talking in general, generalities. It's the hierarchical approach, really, which is developed with the American school system, right? Where you do what I say because I'm the boss, I'm over you, nobody likes that. And I think that's the feeling you get when you're bullied by, I know more than you, right? You should do what I say. And again, that's one of those, when people hear that or face that, there's this natural resistance to it. And I think we can all associate with that you may have exceptions, okay? But certainly I believe the rule is that people do not want to be told what to do, and they especially don't want to be told that what they're doing is wrong, okay? And that, the other people that have advised them are wrong. But that's another conversation. But pretty clear in a lot of the education material for parallel paths that accompanies that document, right? Yes. A lot of Vince's presentations really hit that idea home, right? Of how you show up and what a client resonates with, what connects with them the best. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys to Todd and Patrick, and also everybody that's on the call today. So 2 action steps. 1, email Elizabeth@pem.email if you'd like access to the ability to purchase the summit videos and all the resources. 2, email Elizabeth@pem.email if you would like to be invited into this Friday's Evolve membership call, where we'll do what we normally do and then spend some time helping you get clear on the Evolve membership. And I look forward to seeing lots of shiny faces on camera in October. And of course, I believe that we have an August webinar, August 4th coming up. And I'm sure there will be one in September as well. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate you.
Bye.